Welcome back. My name is Chelsea. I am a full-time artist and children's book author illustrator. And today I am going to walk you through all the steps it took for me to publish my first two children's books and everything I wish I would have known while starting out. So I am packing a ton of information into this video, but don't worry, I will have a more or less high-level reference guide on my website that I'll link below, but you're not going to want to miss this video because this is going into all the nitty-gritty details and personal experience. So if publishing a children's book has been on your radar, this video is for you. I got my notes so I don't lose track, and let's get started. Oh, but first, I'm not going to really talk about my two books much on this video because this is going to be more of a process video, but if you want to look at my books where we're talking through everything, my debut book was this one, The Biggest and Brightest Star in the Sea, and then my second book here is Harley the Painted Dog. So you can look these up on Google, on Amazon, my website if you want to see their listings. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So to start, it starts with passion, and this should be the obvious. Do not get into children's publishing because you think that it's going to be easy money. That could not be further from the truth. It takes a lot to be successful in this industry, and success really is different author to author, but to make money, it takes a lot of time and hard work and also money to get there. So start with passion, make sure that you enjoy creating the books, and make sure that you want to create something meaningful for you and your readers. So, you may have this idea in your head that you've wanted to create into a children's book for a long time. And I would say if this is more of a personal project for you and this is something that you just want to do for yourself and your friends and family, you just want to have a physical book in your hands with a story, then go ahead and write that first manuscript. But if you are serious about potentially getting into children's publishing for the long run, you are going to want to do market research. So what books are currently selling? What is the competition like? There are a lot of videos out there that walk you through how to do market research. I know that Dave from Kindlepreneur has one. You can search YouTube, but do that research. And then also, you are going to want to find what age group you want to write your stories for. Do you want to do children's picture books, more or less for ages 3 to 8 years old? Would you rather do board books, 0 to 3 years old? This is going to dictate what type of book you create, as well as your word count and a type of book. So, all of that. And once you solidify your audience, your age group, your topic, you can write that first draft. I literally wrote it on my phone on notes. And then later, of course, before you work with an editor, you will format it properly in Word to send off to the editor. But just start somewhere. You can write it on your notes. So you have your unedited manuscript. Now you need to decide how you want to publish your book. Do you want to look at self-publishing where you do everything? So you are responsible from hiring and working directly with your editor, your illustrator, your designer, the printing company. You are the full marketing manager and you decide how fast everything goes. So the pros to this are it moves a lot quicker and you often earn higher royalties and you are the sole owner of the full creative process. The cons, of course, are that it can be extremely expensive, and all that upfront money comes out of your own pocket for the editor, for the designer, for the illustrator, any type of marketing or technical things you need done, like building a website and all of that. I know I have some author friends that have spent anywhere from 7 grand to 12 grand on a children's book, so it can really add up. And then it's also with self publishing a little bit harder to get in front of distributors, which leads to larger retailers later on. So just have that in the back of your mind. But it is also becoming a little bit more of a trend now for successful self-published authors to be picked up later by a traditional publishing house. I have several author friends that has happened for. So that's some exciting news right there. But if you do want to look at traditional publishing, this is where you want to try to land with a traditional publishing house or with a literary agent. So you don't mind waiting potentially several years and getting a lot of rejection. And also, you don't mind handing off the full creative process of your story. The pros to this is it is significantly less money out of your own pocket. So you're not going to have to pay for like the editor, the illustrator, all of that. And you will also have more chances of getting into larger retailers with the distribution that you have. And that is obviously ideal for the long run. The cons, as I mentioned, is it does move a lot slower. It is difficult to land. You are going to have smaller royalties, but more often than not, you'll get an advance up front for that as well. And you still need to market your book. So, regardless of which way you publish your book, you will have to be involved in the marketing to actually sell your book. Being with a traditional publisher does not mean that they own the full marketing for it. My decision to self-publish is because I am an artist. I like to say I'm an artist first, author second. So because I can do my own illustrations and I have the technical skills to do the design work myself, I don't have that significant upfront cost. However, I am considering pitching to literary agents in the future for future titles, so we'll see if that goes anywhere. But from here, a bulk of this video is going to be on self-publishing, but later towards the end, where we talk about gearing up for launch, that will also pertain to traditional published authors as well, so stay tuned for that. Now, before I jump into working with an editor and an illustrator, there are some really important things to note. Beware of surface level research. As you start getting into Googling and looking up how to publish a children's book, you're going to come up with a lot of results that say, how to publish a children's book in one day using Canva, how to publish a children's book using AI. Please don't do it. First, kids deserve better. Kids deserve stories that make sense, characters that are memorable and that look consistent throughout the book, that don't have more than 5 fingers on one hand. Okay, kids deserve better. And also, you cannot copyright a book that is made with pre-made graphics on Canva or AI generated content. You can't copyright it. That's a huge thing. So you'll want to push past these, do these quick schemes, and do it right from the beginning. Also, beware of vanity publishers. Vanity publishers take a significant fee from authors up front, and they claim that they are going to publish your book. They kind of act as like a middleman with hiring the editors, the illustrators, all of that. But oftentimes, these are not done well. And a lot of times, the illustrators might be using AI. You get scammed out of the publishing rights a lot of times. So do not do vanity publishers. When you are self-published, you are the publisher. So all these tips I'm going to give you in this video are going to show you how to hire people or how to look for all these different people that you need to be involved in the creation of your book. So beware of vanity publishers. So that leads me to my next recommendation, which is to join Facebook groups. When I first started, I joined 2 different groups. One is Jay Maletsky's group, one is Katie Weaver's group. They were tremendous in me being able to publish my books. In those groups, which I'll link below, you will start to get to know the popular editors, the popular illustrators, the successful authors. Get to know them. And join webinars. When you see these administrators and these popular authors running webinars, join them. At Home Author, Katie Weaver, Ron Kiras, Jay Maletsky, Yobi Q, just to name a few, they are worth every penny, and start learning as much as you can. Also, before you proceed with an editor, you'll want to get beta reader feedback. So in these groups, you can see if anybody else would be happy to be a beta reader for you. You can, of course, ask your friends and family, but I would highly suggest asking other authors for their feedback to see the overall flow of your story. So you decide on self-publishing, you now have your first draft manuscript, and now you can inquire with editors. Inquire with multiple editors. And this way you can find one that really works for you. I think I inquired with 3 different editors before I found one that checked all my boxes. You want to make sure that they're going to mesh well with you. Now, you're not hiring an editor to be your best friend, right? You are hiring them to professionally critique your work. And oftentimes with publishing, your manuscript is like your baby, and you hand that baby off, and to have it dissected and often taken in different directions, it can feel a little bit harsh sometimes. So you want to find one that is great with the critical part of it, but also one that you mesh well with the tone. And editing is a lot more than just hiring an English teacher that you know to go through the grammar. So, the process with editing is typically it'll start with developmental editing, which is your plot, your character development, and then it will go into stylistic editing, which is like your copy, your tonality. And then, of course, if you're doing or writing in rhyme, it'll also be on meter. So, there is a lot to the editing process, and you need to have a professional editor that is in the children's book industry for it. And for my books, I think it took around 4 to 6 weeks for each of them. And it just depends on your word count and, of course, the editor's timeline. And then later down the road, once your files are ready to be almost sent off to the printer, that's when you'll hire a proofreader to put a final look on that, which is usually somebody different than your editor, just to put another pair of eyes on it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Before we talk about hiring an illustrator, we need to talk about how we're going to publish our book because this is going to dictate what trim size we're going to use, what files we're going to need, and all of that. So, do you want to start with print on demand? Print on demand is where you're on a platform like Amazon and a customer finds your listing, they place an order, and they print it right then and there for them and ship it off to them. The biggest con to Amazon or Amazon KDP and Ingram Spark, those are the two most common platforms. Amazon KDP, that stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. The most common downfalls with that is the quality. I just have the paperback. So with print on demand, the hardcovers with Amazon, they have a minimum requirement of 70 or 75 or more pages. So you can't really get children's books printed with them because children's books are typically 24 to 40 pages. So I have the paperback versions here. I will say that the covers are not horrible. It's kind of when you open the inside, the paper quality isn't the best, and the colors definitely take a hit. But they're not bad books. It's just if you compare them to the offset printed hardcovers, it's a lot different. So the con to the print on demand is the quality. And it's also, if you do end up finding that you can print on demand with Ingram Spark for the hardcovers, it's really, really hard to make a profit. But let me back up for a second with the pros of doing print on demand. So the biggest pro is that you're not forking out thousands of money up front for a large print run, and you can test the waters, and also that you don't have a large group of inventory of boxes to store. So if you look behind me back here, that is what 2000 children's books looks like sitting in a living room. If you do have inventory, you need to store it in like a weather controlled environment. And I'll get more into that in a second. But leading into offset printed books. So offset printed books like these hardcovers, this is where they are printed from a printer in bulk. And the industry standard for children's books is to get them done in China. It's almost impossible to profit for books that are printed here in the US. I have seen them go for around $12 or more, which is almost impossible to make a profit on because you would almost need to sell your book for $24 or more, which people just wouldn't buy. So for printing in China, you can imagine, so I sell this book for $17.95, this one for $18.95. So my profit is what I make off that, but minus the cost of printing the book. My landed cost for these books, I think this one is $2.40. This one is around $2.85 or so per book. Minus the retail fees. So for Amazon is 55%. Most retailers are between 40 to 55%. So it's a significant cost into the book. And then when you factor in other costs like shipping your book or ad spend, all these little things add up. And I think I profit around $3 to $4 for my books. So it varies. Now with the print on demand paperbacks, it's actually not that bad. I think I profit almost a little bit higher actually. I think it's like for maybe like the high $4 to $5 range. So it's not horrible, but again, I just like having the multiple options and nothing really beats the quality of the hardcover books. So obviously the pros with the hardcovers is the colors, the quality, the beautiful dust jackets, all of that. But the cons are the upfront print run costs. So like I said, I spent a couple $1,000s. The more books you order, the cheaper the cost per unit or per book. Now you can run a Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign. A lot of different authors do that. I did not, but that's a really popular route to go. And there's Facebook groups dedicated just to that. And obviously they can take months to arrive. And of course, as I mentioned, you are responsible now for storing your inventory in a weather controlled environment. You can't just toss them out to a storage shed outside because of the heat, the humidity, that will all damage your books. You can actually have your books stored in a distribution facility, not necessarily having a distributor, but you can actually have them stored at a facility that houses books and they can help like distribute. This is kind of trailing off a little bit. I'll talk about it more, but there are warehouses where you can actually pay a fee to house your books. Okay, so that's an option. And then, of course, you're responsible. Well, you're always responsible, but you have to sell that inventory. So you have thousands of books, right? I'll be one to admit that I don't have a lot of time to dedicate towards marketing my book like I should. I am focusing a lot more right now on my fine art business. So I don't have enough time in the day, but it's your job to sell that inventory once you have it printed and it's sitting in your house or in a warehouse. And then you also have to be part of the management of the distribution process. So whether you're working with the warehouse, whether you are the one who's fulfilling all your orders, or whether you're shipping it off to Amazon, whatever the case is, you're part of that distribution with your inventory. Now, I do a combination of offset printing and print on demand. If you go to my Amazon listing, you'll see my hardcover, my paperback print on demand, as well as my ebook. And then, of course, I have my own website that I sell through as well. So let's talk Amazon options now. We're going to talk about Amazon a lot, and it's unfortunate, but we need Amazon to sell on. And I've gotten this so many times from people when I tell them, oh, yeah, I'm a children's book author, illustrator. One of the first questions I get is, oh, are you on Amazon? Yes, I'm on Amazon, but it would be so much more beneficial if you would order directly through me and not Amazon. But regardless, we need Amazon. We need to sell on it. I've already gone over KDP and print on demand. For selling hardcovers, it's a little bit different. So there are 2 to 3 options. The first option, which was the most ideal option that I'm in, which is Amazon Advantage. Now, they are no longer taking any new applicants to Amazon Advantage, and this is the consignment program. So basically, they send me purchase orders every week, and I ship my books off to them to sit in their warehouses, and then Amazon fulfills the orders. They kind of phased Amazon Advantage out and they rolled us, I think in the last year or two, over to Vendor Central. But we're still technically called Amazon Advantage. But anyways, they're not opening up new applicants. But the other option is for you to do Amazon Seller Central. That is where you have your own listings and you fulfill the orders. I'm not as familiar with Seller Central, but I remember the con to Seller Central used to be that you couldn't spend ad money. You couldn't run ads on Amazon. That might have changed recently, but that was one of the biggest cons of it. And obviously, you fulfill your own orders. Now, depending on how big you are, it might not be a problem for you. I mean, you hope it's the problem, but that's another thing is you have to fulfill those own orders. But the pro to that program also is I think that the cut or the profit that Amazon takes is a lot less. For Amazon Advantage, I give them 55%. So it is a lot. The last option is being invited to Vendor Central. You have to be invited to that by Amazon, and that usually only happens if you have a distributor or you're a very, very successful author. So it's an option, but not really an option. You have to be invited. And then obviously, it's not just Amazon. You have your own website that you need to sell on. You can also join Fair. Fair is a wholesale website, so you can get your listings up on that. And then a bulk of the money for authors also comes from author and school visits. So tapping into the school visit market is definitely something that you want to do as an author. I have not explored that yet. I've done a few readings for like my son's school, but I haven't actually tapped into like doing proper author and school visits. Ron Kiras has a really good school visit webinar on that, so make sure to take that. And then, of course, local stores, getting into local stores. Now, this is going to be different for every store. So some stores will offer consignment. Some will buy wholesale. Wholesale is the ideal option for you, where they buy a bulk set of books at a discounted rate. That way you don't need to keep track of who has your books on consignment or not. But a lot of stores do want to test consignment to see if the book is actually going to sell or not. And this also goes for Barnes & Noble. Every Barnes & Noble is different. So you're just going to want to go in and talk to the managers. Now, this has been a little bit of a frustration point for me. I haven't approached as many local stores as I need to, but the few that I have approached, this is a common, they oftentimes want to see you in the Ingram database. And that is not Ingram Spark, which is the print on demand. The Ingram Book Club database is what distributors are through. So you would need to have a distributor to be on Ingram. And that's because they want to have the refund option or the return option. But, anyways, try to go to your local stores, talk to them, and see if you can't convince them to buy wholesale or be on consignment being a local author. Now, once you decide on how you're going to publish your book, this is where you start to look at trim sizes. So, how big or what size you want your actual books to be. So, go into bookstores, go to the children's section, and look at what sizes you like. I personally went with the square layout. Just because I wanted to be able to easily scale up and down with my ratio without losing or having to redesign everything for the different platforms. So I found it easier, and I also liked the design of it. But for my next book, I think I'm actually going to do letter size, so it'll be a little bit different. But just go and see what you like. This one's a 9 by 9 inch, and then this one is a 10 by 10 inch. Okay, but as I mentioned, the print on demand with Amazon KDP, you're going to need to look at those size specifications and what they offer. If you do square, 8.5 by 8.5 is the largest they offer. And then, but they also do like the letter size and all that. And then with offset printing, you ask the printer if they print with XYZ. It's usually a lot more customizable for the printers. Now comes more and more of the fun parts where you're going to start looking for an illustrator. So, like I mentioned, go to those Facebook groups. You'll start recognizing who the popular illustrators are. And this is where you'll want to start asking all the questions. Are they free with their timeline? Or what is their turnaround time? Some of them are booked up years in advance. Are they within your budget? Now, I will say, obviously, the more popular illustrators are going to be more expensive. But you also might look at landing some good illustrators that are more so starting out, right? They have really good work, but maybe they're, a little bit greener into the industry and they might work really well with you. You'll also want to ask what's included with their illustration package. Does it include the cover design? Does it include illustrations for marketing collateral? Those are other questions that you're going to want to ask. What media do they use? So the media question is a good one to ask because you want to be really careful with obviously getting scammed out of hiring an AI artist. So look at their social media, see what their process is like, and make sure that they are not using AI. Be very careful with hiring on Fiverr as well. It's common that people say that they're illustrators, but they actually just use AI. So this next section is if you're illustrating the book yourself, which is my story. If you're not illustrating yourself, you can go ahead and jump to the book design portion next. So with illustrating, I began learning Procreate. So while I was waiting for my manuscript with my editors, I started learning Procreate and sketching out my characters. I began finding the brush styles that I liked and also building my color palettes. I actually built like a Pinterest board for this first book, and I did like an ocean theme and just kind of got ocean pictures where I really liked the color palette. So that's where you can start. You can also look at Adobe Illustrator if you'd like. Now, the difference between Procreate and Illustrator, like one of the biggest differences, is going to be the layers. So with Adobe Illustrator, you have like an unlimited amount of layers, whereas with Procreate, with the big trim sizes and file sizes that we're working with, you are very limited to the number of layers that you can do. But you eventually learn to work with it in Procreate if that's what you want to do. And Procreate has a significantly less learning curve than Adobe Illustrator. So just have that in mind. I love Procreate and a lot of illustrators use it. And then next is to format your spreads. So you're going to get from the printer. So directly with the printer, you'll want to ask for the specifications and the template file. And then you're also going to look, if you're doing print on demand, at the file sizes with them, and you're going to set up your templates. Now, there are a lot of videos out there that kind of walk you through this. I also highly, highly, highly recommend getting Affinity Publisher or Adobe InDesign right off the bat to get those files created. It'll save you a lot of headache, and I wish I would have done that. Once your manuscript is fully edited, now you can create your storyboard. I actually got a template off of Canva, and then I adjusted that template to be the number of pages that I was going to do. And now's the part where you do a rough sketch of the entire book, and you can see how it's going to come to life. So mine were just like chicken scratch, but it's a lot of fun to kind of see how the story is going to flow. And then after that is going to be starting to illustrate your interior spreads. So this is the biggest part of the process. And for me, it went like a rough sketch, then it went to final line art, and then it went to painting, just to sum it all up in one sentence. Now, there are a lot of videos that teach you how to use Procreate and how to illustrate. If you want to see my process, let me know in the comments. I can see if I can do a deep dive into my next illustrations that I'm going to be doing. But then will come cover and dust jacket design. Now, some authors will argue that that should be done before anything else. For me, I just find it impossible to illustrate the cover before I illustrate the interior spreads. It's just something that I cannot do. But that is one of the most important parts of your book. And this is what will determine if somebody will stop scrolling and click on your book to buy it or not. So I would also recommend going to, well, on YouTube, you can look for At Home Author, and I think Katie Weaver and Clay Anderson have an interview where they talk about cover design tips, just to have that in your mind. If you are illustrating your book, you can definitely illustrate the cover, but have all these different things in mind, and then you can also work with your designer, which is in the next step. Now that your illustrations are done, this is where we get into the book design and the formatting, and we're talking specifically about typography and your page structure and how the text is all going to fit in. And if you don't have the skills to do this, this is where you want to hire a professional book designer. And this can sometimes be your illustrator, but oftentimes you might hire somebody else for this. Sometimes it might just be for the cover design, which I don't know, can maybe run around $500 just for the cover. But if you're looking for full end-to-end book design and formatting, it could be around $1,500 to $2,000. Those are ranges that I've seen. But again, this can make or break your book, so it will be worth the investment. And at this point is also where you look into your ISBN and your barcode. So your ISBN is a special number. I have these in my barcode right here, right above it. But it's bought separately. It's done separately than the barcode, but it goes together when you put it on the book. Do not get your ISBNs generated from the platforms if you're going to be using print on demand like KDP or Ingram. Don't use those generated ISBNs. You can run into a lot of publishing issues later on. Always buy your own. I use Bowker's. I usually buy a pack of 10 because the paperback, the hardcovers, they need different ISBN numbers. So I purchase them through there. And then for the barcodes, I get mine done through Bucal. They're very similar titles, Bowker's and Bucal. That's where I get my barcodes done. And I will add the links below for all of those. And at this point, you can also start submitting for your copyright. So you have your final files. You can send those off to file your copyright claims, which is so important to do. And you can also apply for your Library of Congress control number. I did not do the Library of Congress for my first book because I didn't really know about it, but now I do, or I did do it for this book. So you can apply for that. And then once your physical books arrive, you will ship off a copy to the Library of Congress. So your book files are ready, and now's the time where you can hire a proofreader. And again, even if your book has been through 5, 10, or more hands, you want to hire that professional proofreader so they can catch any last minute mistakes. Guaranteed they'll find something, and you want to do it before you send your book to print. If you are offset printing and you're done with proofreading, you can now send your files off to the printer. I later on will always start asking for videos and photos of the printmaking process. It's also a marketing item for the printer, so usually they are happy to do it, but I want to do it so I can start pushing out to the public and to see how exciting it is that my book is finally being printed. And then after that, of course, is going to come the long-awaited shipping time where you're waiting for your books to come over on a big boat and then be delivered to your front door. Oh, and one thing I think I forgot to mention earlier on in this video was one of the cons to offset printing. I don't know why I just remembered this, but another risk factor of them is tariffs. So right now with our political climate, Just have that in the back of your mind. The political climate goes up and down, and typically children's books have always been exempt from tariffs. But I don't know, we're playing with fire here, so just know that that is potentially an issue that you could come into, but so far we have been okay in this industry. Gearing up for launch. So I'm not going to spend too much time here on marketing because that would put me here for another couple hours. But when we're gearing up for launch, these are some steps that you're going to do. And oftentimes these are not just starting right now. They're going to start kind of when your whole book is coming to life. And this is when you're building your brand as an author. So you're going to build that website. You're going to start posting on social media. You're going to start gathering email addresses and building a launch team. Let me pause there. So Launch Team is a group of supporters who come to assist with your book launch. This often goes side by side with free ebook days. So for me, when I do my soft launch on Amazon, I run free ebook days. This is before the hardcover is published. I run my free ebook days, and then I send a copy of that free ebook to my launch team. They read it, and I hope that they will leave a review for me. So it'll help having reviews already built up before you launch your hardcovers open to the public. And then at this time, you will also start submitting for editorial reviews like Kirkus. Kirkus is the industry standard, submitting for book awards and also media releases. And then if you're going to be listing your book on Amazon, definitely at this point start creating that listing. It can take a while to get into the rhythm of things and get used to that process. There are tons of videos on YouTube that walk you through the process of how to get on KDP or Amazon as well as Ingram. So you can search for those. And then, of course, make sure that you have that pre-order system set up. If you're not doing a Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign and you need to set up a pre-order on your website, also do that as well. And so I should have added this point at the beginning, but creating your book and everything we've done up until this point is actually the easy part. And marketing and actually selling your book is a hard part. So there's a lot more that you're going to need to learn, and this is really just the start of the next part of the journey. So again, this is a lot of information, and I certainly would not have been here without learning from other authors. So again, look up Katie Weaver. She runs a Little Offbeat Publishing. She's a very successful children's author, and she runs a book launch webinar as well as a masterclass, and it is worth every single penny. Look up At Home Author and also Evie Jones on YouTube. She runs Children's Book University and is a wonderful, wonderful plethora of knowledge. So definitely look those up. It is time to publish. If you are doing print on demand, you can now click publish on the platform. If you are doing offset printing, your books have just arrived on a pallet to your front door. So exciting, other than having to load them all into your house to store them. And this is when you can start shipping off your purchase orders to Amazon, or you can start fulfilling orders from Amazon or your pre-orders from your website or your Kickstarter campaign. And this is when you can also start approaching local bookstores and schools, and your book is officially made available to the public. Congratulations. As I mentioned, these were just steps that I took personally to publish my first few books. Every author is going to have their own unique path, but I hope that this video gave you some good insight into the industry and different ways that you can approach it. And if this video was helpful, I would be grateful if you could let me know in the comments. And if you wanted to subscribe, let me know what you would like to see next. And don't forget, I will link the recap sheet on my website down below. And I wish you all the best of luck in this new journey of approaching your first children's book.